Diana Hall-Allen, West Midlands Vice Chair. Stephen and Blair, this can go via you to the Minister because I wasn't called, but I have to say to you, we're all attending an extremely good conference, and I think we ought to give credit to those who work in our office at the Association of Police Authorities. So my question is, and I think it's an important one, is it the intention to retain a national representative body in future governance so that we can have a continued dialogue at local level with the national level?
Yeah, I think I better take that one.
Oh, good.
Dana, I mean, the answer to that is that in the end has to be a decision for police and crime commissioners when elected. I would be extremely surprised if, as a group, as they gradually coalesce, they don't think that it would be a pretty good idea to have some way of channeling their views, both to the Home Office and, no doubt, to all the other partners that they'll need to think about collectively in the world of policing, but that has to be in the end be a decision for them. What I try to say in my remarks is that we will want to work really closely with the APA as currently constituted, if that's what people in this room want us to go on doing, to work through some of the practicalities of that, about the National Crime Agency, about leadership and development, about the pay negotiating machinery, whatever that is after Tom Windsor's review, because we will need to have some sense of how that might work in a new world. So we will be up for that conversation, but some of it will necessarily depend on the decisions those PCCs make in 18 months' time. The only point I would make, a slightly provocative one, is there is a judgment, of course, for people in this room if the next 18 months are spent saying that those people in due course are all going to be corrupt nutters. That may not be the best way of persuading them that some kind of representative body growing out of the APA is absolutely the best vehicle for getting their points across in due course.
Yeah, that meeting sounds like it'd be as much fun as an APCO
Indeed.
cabinet meeting. Yes. Hugh, how do you think APCO is going to evolve in the new structure, and well, can you foresee a tension between the two groups?
I don't think there's any issue in having a healthy tension between groups. In fact, that's probably quite a good place to be. And we have, I think, generally a very positive relationship with the APA, although when it comes to funding and things, it can get quite exciting. And I will get over that meeting at some stage. In terms of APCO, I think where we can, my vision for APCO, I said one of the first things I did when I got in was to get in front of the Home Affairs Committee to get it on the record that being a PLC is just a very bad place to be. And we shouldn't be one. It was a function of history. It's not anyone's fault. We need to move on. And I think we're getting great support from government and the Home Sec on my vision, or our vision, which is very much to become a chartered institute and create once and for all a profession of policing. I think this ties in quite nicely where I think, you know, the debate around the pay review, around we reward people for contribution as a starting point, rather than necessarily even simply they've done X amount of service. I think that's a healthy way forward, you know, giving officers of pride in their profession, the qualifications within that profession as they go up the scale, be it hierarchically or indeed horizontally as they professionalise and make their career choices. Excuse me, man flu, currently defined as a common cold. So I do think that's really exciting. In fact, if a legacy for APCO is we become that, led by APCO, but creating a set of standards to which people aspire to the moment they walk in the door of policing, I think we create set a huge standard for us to then develop into the future. And I think that's a really positive part of what falls out of the disaggregation of the centre.
Thank you. Next question then. Anybody at the back? You've got a lot of arms in the front. I'm keen to spread us around. No? Okay. So here, sir.
Trying to be even-handed, can we get a commitment from the Minister and perhaps the Home Office that there will be funding provided for these national groups, which includes the APCO and possibly the Chartered Institute and also the Association of Police and Crime Commissioners at national level? I think a commitment at this point that there will be legacy handed over. There's a huge funding issue, I think, in terms of what APCO want to try and do, because they will need to be funded in terms of the future, looking at national things like leadership and all other key issues which they have an important role to fulfill. And similarly for the APA, I think that it's okay for Stephen to sit there saying, well, you know, they can talk about it in the future, but they've got to be working on these things from day one. It's absolutely vitally important to give a commitment at this stage that there will be support for obviously the APCO, for the future of the APA, and obviously the Home Office, the tripartite organisation, and that there will be funding. And could I ask a second question with regard to what's proposed? Sir Denis O'Connor is there, hugely respected within policing, and is an advisor to the Home Office. Is he going to risk assess the new model that's been put forward in terms of whether or not it's fit for purpose?
Okay.
Thank
Stephen,
you very much.
Do you want to say something, and then Denis? Give you time to think, Denis.
What
diplomatic skills to the fore.
Yeah. It's probably not what Paul wants to hear, which is that we have made no decisions about future funding of any of the national bodies, whether that's APCO or APA. That's a debate we will have to have over the next little while. These are extremely tough times, and in the end, these are representative bodies. I think the Home Office's view would be that the starting point has to be, if they're important to you, they need to be funded by you. But of course, there's a debate to be had about where the Home Office fits into that conversation, even in tough times.
Okay, thanks. Dennis?
Just apropos that point, which is easier to handle than the other one, thanks, Paul. What I would say is, if there are national responsibilities which are real, and I think they're very real, they're real now and they will be real in the future, and if there is an issue about coordinating what we do, it seems unthinkable to me that there wouldn't be some underpinning for that in some way or other. That's the first point. And the second point is, Paul, if we're asked, we will.
Chap here with the beard.
Thank you. John Littlechild, Vice Chair, South Wales Police Authority. Police Authority Wales have led the way nationally on collaboration. Do the panel think the new Police and Crime Commissioner will be as interested in collaboration or concentrate more so on local issues?
Okay. Who wants to take it? Stephen, Blair, do you?
Sorry.
Go for it.
Stephen, after I'm happy to start this. I think, as I've been travelling around the country in my new role, what I've seen is exactly as you say, John, huge effort from chiefs and authorities to drive costs out by collaboration. I have to say, with our current structure, it's different everywhere I go, because it's based on different forces, different views, different starting points, different funding, rich forces, poor forces, etc., etc. But there's no lack of will, and I don't see that changing, because the harsh reality is it's one way of driving money out of a business. If you look at, just take Hertfordshire and Bedfordshire, a missed opportunity in my professional judgment, because I think there was a great willingness there to drive even more efficiency out by centralising, bringing two forces into one, creating one head office, one chief officer team. First case of APCO turkeys voting for Christmas I've seen, but with great willingness to actually save money at the top end of a business, not allowed to happen. So we're going to have to operate on suboptimal levels. It will be about collaboration. My sense is PCCs will have no option but to keep driving that forward and taking up the initiatives that the authorities have led on to date.
Stephen?
I agree with that. Firstly, can I say, John, I think having seen some of the really good work in Wales, I mean, I really do want to endorse that. I think Tarion and the like, I mean, are really impressive examples of people thinking radically and from scratch of, you know, how we can bring some of that work together more powerfully across forces, and we all want to see more of that. To be clear, the bill will put a very serious duty on police and crime commissioners to collaborate with each other and indeed to challenge their forces to do the same. And therefore, that will be a very clear part of their responsibility, and one of the things that no doubt the Police and Crime Panel will want to scrutinise and hold them to account over. They, as Hugh says, in any case, will be facing with their top team very serious reductions in funding over the next few years, and if they are remotely businesslike in the way that we want them to be, they are going to want to know how this could improve operational capability at the time that money is reducing. I think it's Hugh's view as well. In many ways, we've still been paddling in the shallows on collaboration over the last few years. I think the time is now ripe to really push that along, and I think police and crime commissioners not only will have no choice, but if they've got any serious strategic sense about them, will want to get into that big time. Last point is, in any case, this is also a matter for the Home Office. The Minister said very clearly, we call it the Herbert paradox, if I can put it that way, that over the last few years the view is that we have been too involved in local policing matters and not sufficiently involved in those issues that go across forces or need to be driven at national level. There is a much stronger line now coming from the Home Office about mandation on those things that are appropriate to be mandated, procurement being the most obvious example. So we ourselves will be driving this agenda with the support of police and crime commissioners and chief constables over the next few years. So there won't be very many hiding places for people who don't want to play this game, I think, going forward. And
don't forget, a police and crime commissioner is going to be very sensitive to the level of tax that they charge. And the best way, if you're a police and crime commissioner, you want to put £1 on the front line, is to find a £2 saving through collaboration, take £1 in freezing your precept and put £1 onto the front line. Denis?
Just a quick point on it, really. The period you're going through is going to be quite hard-nosed in terms of looking at your ability to provide cradle-to-grave services and everything. I think you can have a decent conversation about that, which means you yield some of the supply but retain the service, as it were. And I hope that that's the spirit that goes. That's the public side of it. That has been a bit slow to get off the ground. I think we're going to have to understand that these things take a little time, but not too many years. Some of us haven't got that much time left. But the second more important point for me really is this. When we talk about collaboration, we tend to talk about just things between forces. I think there are other opportunities which have to be really considered. There are other opportunities with other public service, large-scale agencies, number one. And number two, with the private sector. I do wonder whether the centre could actually be supportive, vaguely supportive here, in terms of a little market coordination. I mean, if I was a member of a police authority, I would find it reassuring. You may not. If, for example, there were a list of approved suppliers who operate within reasonable boundaries in terms of the contracts and the possibilities they offered, which shortened the time frame over which you had to actually spend in order to land something that you thought was a very good, deal for your outfit. And particularly if that involved more than one authority, which would be likely to yield you a better deal. So I think, and I hope the Minister's going to consider this, that there is some role for market coordination and some role for stimulating a decent conversation between the private sector and policing, as well as other public sector collaboration.
Absolutely. We've just put in a new fantastic new HR contract system. I mean, in the contract, we've stipulated that we can offer it to other forces. So anybody who wants a deal, see me afterwards. We can provide it cheap. Chuck, 17,000 organisations in the US. Do I assume that collaboration is so complicated you've given up?
It is very difficult. I mean, there is collaboration. It is done at a local level. But, honestly, too many departments have SWAT units. Too many departments have their own training. I think that's going to start to change. I think we're going to be forced to change. By the way, your budget cuts here are more severe than ours. We're looking at about, I think, 6%, and even 6% since 90% of staffing is personnel means training, technology, and all of those things. So and that means laying off police officers, wiping out units. So I don't know. I'm curious how you're going to do even 14%. That seems difficult. I was talking to Peter Fahy the other day, and he addressed 1,900 civilians in Manchester, face to face, to tell them that they might be losing their jobs. So you've got a challenge here.
We do, although I have to say in London the first 2 years we took 350 million out of the budget without touching a hair on anybody's head, and oddly nobody noticed.